So I thought I would just comment on some of the comments that have been posted in the various video exchanges that have gone on between Gary and me on the antinatalist debate discussion. And I think it is, for me, again, from my perspective, this the comments themselves, the many comments, and a lot of the comments are things like, how can Anton say that life is a gift, or even use the word gift when there's so much suffering and loss and hardship, and people's parents die, and cancer and other debilitating diseases have slow and painful deaths that others have to watch. And look, I understand. I'm not being unsympathetic. I understand. But to me, this is where the question of, is there room for a kind of spirituality or religiosity minus the dogma? I think the kind of despair and nihilism that I see, and nihilism is, if people are offended by that word, I'm sorry. I don't know what other word to use for people saying life is basically meaningless. When people say meaningless, I think that's nihilist. And when when I see so much potential, and I don't even know how to phrase it, I guess, but there does seem to be resources for coping with life's hardships, injustices, cruelties in religious faiths and in religious traditions. The task is to be able to wean the psychological insights and the important understandings in the symbolism of those religious traditions, and then to extricate that out from all the dogma. Now, I've said on many times, that I'm somewhat interested in the possibilities of a spirituality grounded in contemporary science. That is, what would it mean to say that there is a kind of love, of an evolving and an evolving sense of conscience. Um, Again, some of this is so difficult, I guess, to talk about. Maybe some stories or some examples would be more helpful. I think, if you take the Christ metaphor as an example, and I think I talked about this when I responded to Angie the anti-theist, and this was a long time ago. I shot a video response to her, but the Christ metaphor, the Christ story, you take the perfect person who did nothing wrong, did nothing but attempt to bring peace and, I guess, justice to others, and then you inflict hardship upon them, cruelties, and what they say is, I affirm even this, I affirm even this. And they accept it as, I guess, as part of the deal. And I don't know, the religious stories of, and maybe Western traditions are just problematic. I mean, maybe that's just what it is. There's just so much dogma there that when you try to get people to understand the point of detaching from ego, and you try to say, look, it's about learning to observe your ego participate in space time, that there is sentience. See, I think sentience is maybe part of the problem. I mean, there is a sentience that we could talk about, but it seems like it's on multiple levels. There is a kind of observing that can go on by way of an awareness, and then there is the ego identified participations in space and time of all of the ways that I am identified with my actions, my beliefs, the involvements sort of that I'm engaged in. I think there's so many horizons where I can get caught up in things and lose lose this perspective of observing myself as if I'm, I guess, with a kind of study and detachment, I guess would maybe be the way to talk about it. I think there are, what could be called spiritual exercises that one can cultivate to help deal with all of the hardships, to help cultivate senses of forgiveness and gratitude despite the loss and the hardship. See, that's what I think it's about. I think for some people, religion and spiritual traditions, they help them cultivate love, forgiveness, compassion, charity. I think lots of, I guess for lack of a better word, positive emotional responses to the injustices, the cruelties, the hardships, all the suffering. And I think the task is, what could be understood? How can we understand ourselves? How can we understand our interactions with others? What could we learn? What could we know in studying sacred texts, studying religious texts that would enable us to be more forgiving, to be more compassionate, to be more, um, I guess, fair and just in our treatment with others? I mean, how can we learn to help alleviate suffering, give more compassion, and um, again, love, courage? I think some of it is courage. It's as if some people, they need the super fantastical stuff. They need the promises of divine intervention. They need the promises of the afterlife and all this other stuff in order for them to gain something like compassion and courage and forgiveness. Whereas I think there are other people who they find it in the myths and in the stories. They find it in the allegories and the, I don't know, some of the stories. Like, I tell the story of the face of glory, right? And I know I've told this before, right? That the face of glory, it appears in Heinrich Zimmer's book, Myths and Symbols in Indian Art and Civilization. Joseph Campbell tells it several times, but it's, I think it's Shiva. Shiva's on the throne and of the palace, and there's a wildebeest, or yeah, like some sort of creature there that, well, I got to tell this right? So she was there and has like the bride at his side, her side, right? Again, this gets really complicated. Multiple beyond sex kind of gods, but the bride, Shrikdra, I can't remember the name, but there's this bride to the side of Shiva, and this wildebeest comes into the palace and is about to grab the bride and flee, and Shiva's going to have none of this, and opens up the third eye, the lotus of command, and boom, conjures up this angry, hungry monster that's like howling, and the monster grabs the beast and is about to devour it. And the beast realizes what had happened and thinks, holy cow, what was I thinking? And throws himself on the mercy of Shiva and says, please, Shiva, I didn't know what I was doing. I beg your mercy. Let me flee. And Shiva says, okay, be gone with you. And the monster, lets the beast go, and it flees out. Well, then this monster lets out this big howl and scream, it's like piercing sound. And Shiva says, yes, what's wrong? And the monster says, when you made me hungry. Now what will I eat? And Shiva thinks about it, says, yeah, I guess I did. I made you and made you hungry. And Shiva says, you will eat yourself. And Shiva gets down on the ground and starts to devour its legs and its feet and its legs, and it chews and chews and chews up its torso and all the way until it's nothing but a mouth on the palace floor. Shiva leans back, laughs, calls it the face of glory, and says, this is the embodiment of what life is. It was a conjured beast, or a conjured monster, and it was conjured in such a way that it was made hungry, and it stays alive by devouring itself. And it's a gory spectacle, but this as a metaphor, when people think about it, when they come to see life as a divinely created, hungry monster that in a gory, bloody spectacle devours itself, and it's a face of glory. It's a face of glory. It's a complex symbol. I think it helps people handle and navigate the ambiguity of life. I don't think anybody's saying that, look, everything always comes up roses and it's all rainbows and puppies and lollipops and everything is wonderful, and when life gives you lemons, give lemonade. That's not it at all. That's not it at all. The point is that there are ways of understanding ourselves, ways of bringing meaning to our lives that come from how we understand ourselves. That if I suddenly come to see myself as more than Corey, if I suddenly say, well, I'm just Corey, and Corey is this thing that's in space and time, and Corey is I was born at this date, and I have these goals and these political alignments and all this, that's very different than if I say, this body that right now I am is a place and moment of everything that's ever been. And part of my consciousness can become aware of my thoughts and my beliefs with a kind of study and detachment. And it's as if life itself can be both lived and studied at the same time. Sometimes I'm living it and I'm caught in the throe of the play, and I can weep over the injustices and I can laugh over how fun things are. But in a moment otherwise, I can somehow be beyond, behind, outside, studying with an observation. And it happens in moments, in flashes. But I think there are, and it doesn't have to be religious. No dogma. You don't have to have a creator. You don't have to have judgment of guy in the sky. But I think we do have to deal with problems. I've talked about this in so many videos of self-relation. The problem of an organism that bears self-consciousness is that it somehow relates to itself. And as I said, it has like these multiple levels of conscious awareness that I think in so many ways spiritual traditions, spiritual practices are trying to help people cultivate those resources that help them manage and cope with all of life's of difficulties. And there is a sense in which no matter how horrible life gets, and it's a horrible place. It's an angry, howling monster. It's an angry, you know, beast, that's devouring itself. But I think the point is that we've been given, and it's emerged, maybe is a better word, like somehow consciousness emerged with a capacity for thought about what is happening to us. We have the capacity to reflect upon our experiences rather than just be installed in our experiences. I think the significance of that, it shouldn't be underestimated. I don't think it makes life better, easier. It's not that somehow it's a magic wand that there's new horizons of resilience, of fortitude, of courage and acceptance. And when when a loved one, your grandparent dies, or it's a parent or someone who's very close to you, a loved one, I think the gift character isn't revealed in the death of the person. No, the gift character is revealed when you step back and you think of how you were given the capacity to know and to love that person, as painful as that person's loss is. I think it's true. The loss of others that we love is very, very painful. But there is a kind of, for lack of a better word, there is a harmony and a grace in courageously understanding your capacity to accept that, to be thankful for having the opportunity to have felt those feelings and to have known the person in whatever extent you did. There's a kind of ego like dragon that says, I have the right to everything. And you don't, others' life and death isn't within your power. Sometimes, disease takes out loved ones, and hardships and natural disasters, they take out the people we love, and even ourselves. Life can be slow and painful, but to lose sight of all that one has been given, to lose sight of the gratitude that is possible despite all the hardship and loss. I think this is where I think some people fear the kind of psychological state, the nihilistic state that potentially comes in with loss of religion. I think that those people who want to critique dogma and they want to say, look, all of the windy poops and fairy dust needs to go. Okay, but if we try to ignore the spiritual import, the psychological usefulness of various religious orientations, I think many people are left in despair and a kind of nihilism where if they were more actively trying to understand the kinds of, I don't know, the practical usefulness of detaching certain spiritual insights about the problem of ego, the problem of, again, of attachment to the past, of how ought one relate to time, to what extent is my life mine, to what extent is it on loan from me, to what extent are all of my experiences uh, completely mine, to what extent do I have obligations. I mean, the more that we start to deal with some of these ways of getting at self-relation, I think we can get at um, potentially some of the ways that forms of spirituality are very helpful for people during times of great loss and suffering. Okay, so thanks.